Okay, I will start now. Good morning and welcome to this webinar. Today we will discuss about the future of heating in the broader picture of the energy transition in Europe. I'm Eloi, Director of Market Intelligence, and I will share this webinar today. As keynote, we will hear Brian Van Matisen, professor at Aalborg University, who has just finalized with his team a new master study, Heat Roadmap 5. And this study is the latest iteration of a series produced by Aalborg University with a modeling which has been enriched and developed over time and which gives the most detailed and comprehensive view of the journey towards a smarter energy system in Europe, providing a clear idea of the very much needed transformation of the heat sector. After Brian's presentation, I will open the discussions to developers on the ground who are shaping the heat transition. First, I would like to thank companies who supported this project: Isoplus, Engie, Evalence, Danfoss, Alfa Laval, and Energy. And now I would like to turn to Brian, who will present the key results of the study. Brian, please, you can go.
Thank you very much, Eloi. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm a professor at Aalborg University in Denmark, and I maybe to somebody's surprise don't specialize in heat markets. I specialize in energy systems, and the study here is actually about understanding the heat market in an energy system context. I'll just see if I can be allowed. Yeah. So the study has been prepared by a number of people at Aalborg University over a long period of time, and we have used our methods in a way where we try to create a bottom-up approach for also looking at these problems top-down to the furthest extent possible, and for all of the European Union. Our sort of, just to bring you a little into the machine room, our methodological considerations are vast. So we do 3 different heat saving levels for the European building stock, and this stock is very different from country to country. We use geographical analysis for the future heat demands. We have a comprehensive assessment of future waste heat and renewable heat potentials, and we use geographical analysis to understand these heat sources, being renewable and waste heat. We're then looking at different heat market shares between district heating and individual heating, so going from very little and less district heating than we have today to much more than we have today. We have looked at 7 district heating supply mixes, and we have done almost 50,000 hour-by-hour all energy system analysis to understand some of these things. In a brief way, we could say we have buildings, we have energy systems modeling, we have an understanding of the heat markets, and then we have a lot of renewable electricity as well in our system, and we use geographical information systems, or GIS analysis, and energy system analysis in order to create our results. And our objective is a fossil-free and cost-effective decarbonized energy system. And in such a system, has a central role for energy savings, energy efficiency, electrification, and sector integration. For the heat share, we decrease the heat demands from 2.8 petawatt hours to 1.6 petawatt hours, a little more than 40%. And we, as a part of this, have electrified the industrial sector, which of course has a lot of waste heat, which means we have decarbonized our waste heat. But we have also electrified a lot of other elements, including mobility, in our system. A total primary energy supply, as you can see here, is decreased substantially due to these savings. And this energy system level, or energy efficiency 2.0 level, improvement of our dynamics in the system. When we look at the untapped potential for renewable and decarbonized industrial waste heat, we can see that compared to the future heat demand, which is around 1.6 petawatt hours, we have almost twice that amount available. And we can see that there's a very large potential for renewable heat from geothermal and solar thermal, but also industrial waste heat, 0.8 petawatt hours, data centers 0.2 petawatt hours, and wastewater treatment plants as well. We have divided our waste heat sources into different temperature levels, which also means that we need heat pumps in order to utilize this heat, and we need to understand the temporal aspect of our system. Now, the temporal aspects and the geographical aspects of our system means that we have another assessment of what is can cost efficiently be used. So the full potential may be 3.1 petawatt hours, but in effect we can maybe use around 0.6 to 0.9 petawatt hours, or 646 to 900 terawatt hours per year, when we understand the temporal aspects and the geographical aspects. And this also requires that we expand our district heating level to about 55% in the future. When we have a recommended level of 55%, it also means that there are different levels in the different countries. We have intermediate milestones in 2030 and 2040, and we recommend that we build around 20,000 new systems. There's a very high potential in France, Germany, Netherlands, and Spain and Belgium. And we can see that we need to accelerate the growth to around 7% here in the first years. We can also see there's a large role for individual heat pumps. They represent around 30% of the total heat demand, which is much more than we see today. When we then look at the way we supply this heat, it's important to understand that even though we go from 13-15% district heating today to 55%, it is not a 3 times as much district heating production we need. Because at the same time, we have a much more efficient system. We use low temperature district heating, and we also have decreased our heat demands by 40%. But when we look at the recommended supply mix, we actually electrify almost 40% of the district heating, and we electrify it in a way where we are very flexible, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But the flexibility is enabled by a very large expansion of thermal storages in the district heating systems, where we can utilize the waste heat sources and eliminate some of the temporal limitations. And we can also utilize large-scale heat pumps in a way where we can utilize the low-cost renewable electricity when it's there, And as opposed to individual heat pumps, we're able to shut off completely the heat pumps for those 14 days or 3 weeks where we have no wind or PV, and then use other sources in that period. Waste heat is important. We have waste heat from industry of 18%, and then medium and low temperature heat of 16%, including data centers and wastewater treatment plants. Geothermal represents 8%, and we have biogenic sources from CHPs and boilers of 6%, and then we have 2% solar thermal in this supply mix. Just as an example, here you can see some of the highlights of where we can see there's a very high amount of industrial waste heat, which is also in proximity of a very high population. And these are very low-hanging fruits that we can harvest around Europe, where we actually do not, in most of the time, need a heat pump, but we need to do a mix of supply. Here we have the needed investments in the district heating grid, and we need to accelerate, as I said, the investments to more than 300 billion in the next years to come. And it's very important to understand that we need to start new grids and expand existing grids. But if we do not start the new grids now, we're not able to allow them to grow towards 2050 to have this 55% coverage. So it's very important to invest in these grids so that they're able to organically grow in the coming years. We also need investments in the heating sector of almost 3 trillion, and we need to renovate the buildings. The building renovation is needed no matter what kind of heat supply we have, and the costs that we have here are offset by savings in our fuel supply. The total sort of picture that we have is more or less illustrated in this list of results. We can see that we are able to reduce the system costs by 2.5 to 3% if we have 55% district heating and introduce this smart energy system element and this sector integration element. We can see, if we zoom in on the heat supply costs, that we're able to reduce those by 10 to 20%, depending on what scenarios we're looking at. And we can have cost reductions for those with district heating of up to 30 or 35%. Of course, this is subject to local conditions, and this is from our modeling perspective. District heating and electrification is not an opposite. It goes very well hand in hand, and actually it allows for a smart electrification strategy where we can have a 50% coverage with large scale and small scale heat pumps on the total heat market. It also allows us to integrate more renewables and to utilize low temperature heat sources to a further extent. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Brian, for the sharp presentation and also for sticking to the time slot. It is, well, definitely it's really encouraging to see that we are not running out of sustainable heat sources in Europe. It is also really interesting to see the necessary evolution and opportunities you pointed out in terms of fuel mix, with a renewed district heating fuel mix centered around electrification, waste heat, and the direct use of sources like geothermal, solar, and bioenergy. The results also show a very large role for heat pumps of all sizes, so mega heat pumps and small heat pumps. And speaking of which, I'm really very happy and glad this morning that Josephine, Policy Director at EHPA, could join us. Josephine, I know that you have read the study with a lot of attention. So, are you surprised by the findings? So, basically, it shows well a big role, as I said, for large heat pumps within district heating, but it also shows a complementarity between small and large heat pumps. It also forces a huge wave of investment into heat pumps, around over 900 billion by 2050. So, Josephine, what's your take?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Eloi, for the invitation. And also thank you, Brian, for the very interesting study. I think it's also super timely that you're publishing this now that the drafting of the European Commission's heating and cooling strategy and electrification plan are ongoing. So Margot will look further into that later in this session. But yeah, super timely and very interesting. So I'm from the European Heat Pump Association, and we represent 224 members at the moment across the whole value chain of heat pumps. So heat pump and heat pump component manufacturers, but also utilities, research institutes, national associations, consultancies, and so on. And very important, especially in this context, is that we represent the different heat pump applications and sizes. So heat pumps for residential use, commercial use, and also the large ones used in industrial applications and in district heating. So in that regard, indeed, the outcome, as you pointed out, Eloi and Brian, are very important. So this complementarity and the fact that both are needed. Yeah, for us, of course, achieving the highest efficiency at the lowest cost, it depends on detecting and selecting the optimal heat sources, looking at where different heat pumps are most appropriate, either individual, more collective for a few houses, or the large ones feeding into district heating and cooling. So again, they are complementary, and we will need them all to decarbonize and to achieve our climate and energy targets. So for me, there's three things that really stood out in the study that I would like to point out, and also elaborate a bit on what I think, or what we think is crucial to achieve them. So first of all, of course, this huge potential for heat pumps. So more than 50% of the demand being covered by large scale and small scale heat pumps in 2050. So it's very clear that heat pumps are the number one heating and cooling source by 2050. So I think, yeah, that's very important. So heat pumps for heating, but on top of that, we also have the potential of heat pumps in industry to decarbonize and electrify industrial processes. So that comes even on top of those used purely for heating. So what is key to unlock this? I think, yeah, many people will know this speech, but of course we have to make the business case work. We need to fix the financial picture. Yeah, as long as we have cheaper fossil fuels, it's hard to compete. So we really need to fix this electricity to gas price ratio, shift taxes and levies away from the electricity bill, and also implement the ETS to give the right signals to investors and consumers. Then a second point for me that stood out is this pivotal role of waste heat, this huge untapped potential for renewable and decarbonized industrial waste heat. So really having these numbers, putting numbers on this source is very important, and also really showing that it's currently very underexploited. So we really need to unlock this. We need to map and to valorize very clearly all this waste heat. And there we see different categories, I would say. We see waste heat from buildings, commercial, hotels, offices, SMEs, and so on. There, I think it's still very important that we need to create awareness that when they have, for example, now a chiller or a cooling system, that this is also a source of waste heat that can be used and be valorized by putting in a heat pump. Then, of course, the industrial waste heat that can feed into district heating systems, there you are doing already a lot of mapping at Euroheat Power and also within this study. So that's very important that that's more, I would say, even more widespread and known across Europe. Also, the mappings done at national and local level, they need to be speeded up and further implemented, as also agreed in the Green Deal legislation. And then on top of that, we also have the industrial waste heat that can be used on site or for other industries. So a lot of very high temperature processes and heavy industries, they have waste heat that can be first used, for example, in their own process or even in other industries. And then secondly, be used for heating purposes even after that. So a type of cascading system, creating a market for this waste heat, or for example, creating subsidies that support the use of this waste heat will be very important. And then the third point that stood out for me is indeed this flexibility and electrification. The large heat pump and thermal storage for renewable energy integration and load shedding, that they are really crucial, and that we need a smart electrification strategy. Indeed, we need to unlock and valorize flexibility both from small and large heat pumps. And for that, we will need new business models that really monetize the value of flexible heat pump operation, again, the large ones and the individual ones via aggregators, for example. We need to implement a range of legislation that actually is already there and aims to do exactly that. So the electricity market design, which looks at, forces to enable flexible electricity contracts, ensures that flexibility services are fairly remunerated and consumers are being rewarded. Also specifically for large heat pumps, we need to properly reward them for the flexibility that they bring to the system. And then again, in industrial processes, there, from the technology itself, heat pumps can be used flexibly, but there's still some work with the end users, I would say, because there we very often hear that the processes cannot be run in a flexible way. So integrating properly storage, that is still something to work on, to further valorize this flexibility also there. So I will keep it here from my side. I think it's super interesting. Thanks a lot for the study. Also for our work at European Heat Pump Association, we will be happy to use the data, and the graphs also to further spread the message. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Josephine. A lot of very interesting points you raise, and we will get back on the next steps with Margot on how to accelerate the heat transition. Now I need to jump to the next speaker, Asbjørn from Energy. So we'll discuss a bit about geothermal. So today, geothermal in our system represents 2.5% of the mix for broader Europe and less than 1% for the EU. And you showed the figures. You saw the figures in the presentation of Ryan. Obviously, the study shows that geothermal will become a strong pillar of our systems by 2050 with around 100 terawatt-hour of heat. Asbjørn, I know that these days you are on a mission to grow and decarbonize heat networks across Europe. Can you share with us your thoughts on the results of the study, and also can you put flesh on the bones with recent examples, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Eloa, and also thank you, Brian, for the report and the important findings on how we can most efficiently transition the European heating sector and make it competitive and resilient and sustainable. And as you saw, geothermal is expected to play a major role in that district heating network as what you call the prime source of direct renewable heat. I know that geothermal to many is new, so I would actually like to show you how it works and what it looks like. So please join me for a trip to Aarhus. That is Denmark's second largest city, and with one of the highest district heating penetration rates in Europe. They simply love district heating. And here the district heating company is implementing what I would call the future of district heating. Moving away from burning imported wood pellets towards what Brian also talked about, a fundamental electrification and diversification of the heat sources, making it the district heating system a more important part in the flexible energy system, and also actually lowering the prices for the consumers. So also interesting when we speak about affordable energy. Now, this is how the heat production looks like today. And even though I know it's small, at least it is on my screen, I think you can see that it's mainly waste to energy and then biomass that they are burning. And this is how it will look already in 2030. So there's a massive shift towards electrification, with geothermal, of course, playing an important role, supplying approximately 20% of the district heating demand. And just 3 weeks ago, our first geothermal plant went online. 3 years after contract signing, on time and on budget. And now I'd like to invite you to see how such a geothermal plant looks like. So join my CEO and the CEO of the district heating company, and they'll simply show you around. And now I hope it will play.
Velkommen til Skyby Aarhus, hvor vi står foran vores helt nye geotermiske anlæg, som vi i dag indvier. Mit navn er Samir Abud.
Mit navn er Bjarne Munk Jensen. Jeg er rigtig stolt over, at vi står ved det første af mange anlæg i Aarhus. Når de er færdige, skal det levere op til 20% af fjernvarmen i Aarhus. Og det er vores første skridt i at elektrificere fjernvarmen, hvor vi bruger luften, vi bruger vandet, men vi bruger også energien langt under vores fødder.
Og det vi har bag os her, det er de 2 brønde i vores geotermiske anlæg, som er boret til en dybde af 2,5 km, for at vi kan høste den varme, der ligger under vores fødder her i Aarhus. Og det vand, vi henter op, det er omkring 70 grader, og når vi så sender det tilbage igen, efter vi har høstet varmen, så er det 10 grader. Og det er forholdsvis meget vand, vi cirkulerer hver dag. Det er 6 millioner liter vand om dagen, vi cirkulerer.
Så Samir, skal vi gå ind og se, hvordan vi kan høste fjernvarmen.
Og nu er vi så kommet indenfor i bygningen, hvor vi står foran vores filtre. Det er sådan set det første, der sker med vandet, når vi har produceret det, det er, at vi filtrerer vandet. Og det er fordi, at vandet kommer op med så høj en hastighed, det kommer op med omkring 250 kubikmeter i timen. Og det betyder, at man ikke helt kan undgå, at der kommer en lille bit smule sand med op med vandet, og det er så det, vi filtrerer fra her. Så det vand, vi sender tilbage i reservoiret, er 100% rent. Her overføres den første del af den geotermiske energi til fjernvarmesystemet via vores direkte varmeveksler. 40% af energien kan overføres via direkte veksling. Og om sommeren og i skulderperioderne, jamen der vil vi kunne levere varme til fjernvarmen uden yderligere brug af elektricitet. Og det her er så varmepumpedelen af vores geotermiske anlæg. 12 mindre varmepumper, der gør, at vi meget mere fleksibelt kan levere varmen. Det er varmepumperne, der hiver den sidste del af varmen af det geotermiske vand ud. De hiver varmen ud ned til 10 grader. Det er også de her varmepumper, der gør, at vi kan levere præcis den temperatur, som kredsløb efterspørger. Her er injektionsbrøndene. Her øges trykket til 90 bar og sendes ud af bygningen og ned i injektionsbrøndene, så vandet ender tilbage til moder natur og endnu en gang bliver opvarmet fra energien fra jordens kerne.
Lige her bag ved mig, der kommer den geotermiske varme ind i vores system i kredsløb. Og det vi har her, der kommer den afkølede vand tilbage for vores kunder. Her står vi så ved siden af det dobbelte transmissionssystem, der leverer energi ud fra Studstrømværket af. Og hele ideen med geotermisk varme er jo faktisk at erstatte energien i de her rør, der kommer fra importerede træpiller med geotermisk varme. Her står vi ved siden af varmevekslerne, der skal sikre, at kunderne får den rigtige temperatur. Det sker ved, at vi bruger forskellige varmekilder i forhold til de elpriser, der er ude på markedet. Når så mere skal vi så gå over for tændt for geotermien.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you what it really looks like, because I think all over Europe there's not that much geothermal, as Eloire just said. And as you know, geothermal is homegrown, it's renewable, and it is, as you can see, perfectly suited for urban areas because there's no noise when it's operating, outside the building, of course, there's no emission, and there is, in fact, a very little footprint after construction. In Aarhus, we use proven technology, which we have adapted from oil and gas, and it is competitive to other heat sources. It has been measured. So I hope that in the future we can unlock this enormous potential across Europe and meet the numbers that Brian just presented in his simulation. Thank you very much, Edouard.
Thanks a lot, John. I think it was really interesting. Arus is a great example. You know, I was in Poland yesterday with our friends from Veolia, and geothermal is also there seen as a very important source to decarbonize systems, to grow systems. Just it validates the analysis presented by Brian. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Now I would like to turn to our next speaker, to Raymond. So we have heard Brian and Josephine. So obviously the study shows the crucial importance of heat pumps, in particular of large heat pumps within district heating system. They will allow to, of course, supply energy to harness new low temperature heat sources, but also, so very important, they will enable the cooperation between sectors, and namely they will also ensure system integration. So Raymond, you work for Everlands. I know that you are very busy these days installing large heat pumps across Europe. And actually it seems there is like a contest between utilities to know who will install the largest heat pump. Raymond, can you share with us your thoughts on the work done by Aalborg Academics?
Yes, sure,
Please.
Elwan. Thank you very much. First of all, thanks for having me this morning. And I'm working for Everlands. I'm a senior executive for global business development for our large-scale heat pumps. First of all, in my opinion, it doesn't matter who has got the largest heat pump currently under construction. It is important that we have large-scale heat pumps under construction. I personally believe that this study shows that the low-hanging fruit to overcome and achieve the heat and cold transition, that district heating is a key element to make this. And let me share a couple of slides. So first of all, what is the EU framework actually requesting from the industry? And with industry, I mean our potential customer, the district heating operators, as well as us, the technology suppliers, what we just heard in Argy, but also others. We have to achieve the goal, what our politicians want from us. So this is lowering the CO2 emissions to meet the climate goals, which we set by 2040, 50. Then we want to achieve affordable heating to everyone. The heating sources for the district heating or for any other heating should be clean, sustainable, and should decarbonize the heating and the cooling. Then we should utilize renewable resources, as well as we can recover waste heat actually where it is possible. And last but not least, the EU framework is looking for technology that fosters the energy and the heat and cold transition. And there is hardly any other technology which can achieve that than heat pumps. And in this particular case here with these district heating, it is mega heat pumps, because they can deliver even more, and we heard something about it already. So because they can provide huge thermal storage, which is also needed to balance the fluctuation from the increasing renewables being in the grid. And also they provide sector coupling opportunities, including waste heat recovery. And also most of the suppliers for mega heat pumps are made in Europe. And I think we also have to look a little bit for that. And to underline what I just said, so I put the heat pumps in the center, and what you can see, they are extremely important, not only for district heating, but for the overall ecosystem. And a heat pump supplies heat for district heating, but also at the same time, it provides cold, which can be used for cooling a data center or cooling other applications like carbon capture or H2 production. And as you also can see here, it integrates renewables. And this is also very important because we have a lot of fluctuations, and we will see more to come in the future, the more wind and solar is coming to the grid. And this is giving headache to our TSO and DSOs, and heat pumps can actually work on stabilization, the grid, not only on the secondary reserve, but even on the primary reserve. What does that mean? On the primary reserve, we are helping to actually balance the frequency so that we keep the electricity in the 50 hertz. And last but not least, because of these fluctuations on the renewables, we need to have storage. And if we talk about storage, we basically mean electricity storage, but also thermal storage is a very important storage, which we can handle now with heat pumps, of course, of this large scale. When I move on, then this is my last slide. We are currently working on these 5 large groundbreaking mega heat pump projects for district heating. And this is good news because actually these 5 projects alone, they are going to heat and help keep people warm feet in the wintertime, 660,000 people. 660,000 people get warm in wintertime by just 5 of these large projects. And when it comes to save CO2 emissions, then these 5 projects in the future will save 500,000 tons of CO2. And this is just the 5 projects we are currently under construction, but I'm very glad that also our competitors are working on other projects. So this is the right way forward, large and mega scale heat pumps to bring down CO2 savings and bring heat home to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raymond, for showing the big picture and the role of large heat pumps in this completely new energy jigsaw. Thank you very much. Now I will turn to Samuel Petit from ENGIE. So Samuel, the study identifies a very large potential for district heating systems. So Brian mentioned a recommendation for a 55% market share for district heating by the 2050 horizon. So it corresponds basically to annual growth of 7% from now until 2030 and around 5% after 2030. Some countries are doing it. Samuel, can you share this morning with us your thoughts and how ENGIE is positioned actually to accelerate the heat transition?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, Eloi. Thank you for the study, and of course, thank you for the invitations. So first of all, don't worry, I won't be reading this entire slide. I like to highlight a few key points drawing on the Albert study finding, and then, as a bonus, share the flattest trends in the development of a district heating network market in France. So the high potential for DHN development identified in the Albert study is clearly reflecting in France. Today, we have 1,000 DHN delivering more than 32 terawatt-hour, which represent roughly 5% of the market share. The Hallberg study recommends an annual growth rate of 7% until 2030. In France, we are on track. 2024 figures show a record year with nearly a 9.5% increase in climate-adjusted DHN delivery. Over the past decade, we have nearly doubled both the number of DHN and the number of buildings connecting, and more than doubled the share of renewable and recoverable energy. With the Albert study, call for over 20,000 new systems by 2050, France has created 500 new DHNs in the last 10 years. So it's a positive trend. Looking to a future, the latest draft of France energy planning document called PPE3 draft propose an ambitious DHN development up to 19 terawatt-hour delivered by 2035, with 80% from renewable and recovered source. This aligns with the proposed 2030 market share of 20% in the Aalborg study, and put us on the right path toward the 2050 target of 55% proposed in the study. However, it's important to note that this achievement are the result of a long-term measure on funding which must be sustained. The Fonds Chaleur, or its fund, France's main investment support for DHN, has more than doubled since 2020, reaching 800 million euros today, with about 55% dedicated to DHN. Thanks to this, the share of renewable and recoverable energy has risen from 31% in 2009 to 67% today. Nationally, the plan was for the fund to reach 1.2 billion by 2025 and up to 2.3 billion by 2030. But this trajectory is now uncertain due to budget constraints. At the European level, the multi-annual financial framework has rightly identified energy efficiency, DHN, and waste heat recovery as competitiveness priorities. These priorities must be maintained in the final framework from 2028 to 2034, in line with the need identified in the Aalborg study, to complement national policies like the Fonds Chaleur, which have already proven effective in decarbonizing heating and cooling. To sum up, France's progress demonstrates that with the right policies on sustained investment, the ambition targets set out in the Aalborg study are within reach. We need to continue working together at the European level to secure the funding and policy support needed to accelerate the decarbonization of heating. So for this second slide, the Aalborg study notes that Europe has sufficient local resources to meet its heating needs by 2050, and it identifies three main pathways to supply DHN: waste heat recovery, renewable, and electrification. We all agree with this trend to come. Now, I want to stress in particular the importance of the energy efficiency first principle, and within that, prioritizing local waste heat recovery in the energy mix. DHN are uniquely capable of recovering waste heat, and we must make this a priority, regardless of the source or temperature. In France, the potential is significant. The PPE3 draft project a sevenfold increase in waste heat recovery, from just 4 terawatt-hour in 2022 to as much as 29 terawatt-hour by 2035. Since 2024, France has applied a virtuous approach called ENR Choix for eligibility to the Fonds Chaleur subsidy. The first priority is to connect the building to a DHN where available. Then there's a merit order to energy source within DHNs to qualify for subsidies. When available, waste heat recovery comes first, followed by geothermal and solar thermal, then biomass, and finally aerothermal. This concept is quite innovative. There are other levers to boost waste heat recovery, and I'll mention two recommended by the sector in France. First, a dedicated insurance fund is needed to de-risk industrial waste heat integrations. This will guarantee the availability of heat source and service continuity, bridging the gap between the long-term economic of DHN and the short-term commitment of industrial partners. For example, if a heat source fails, operators need concrete contingency and backup solutions. Second, better integration of waste heat recovery in the energy performance of building directive. Waste heat should contribute to a building energy efficiency rating, which is not the case today. Let me share now two real examples from ENGIE that demonstrate the maturity and scalability of these solutions. In Amiens, the DHNs recover heat from a wastewater treatment plant producing 46 gigawatt-hour in 2024 with 6 ammonia heat pumps of 18 megawatts. In Saint-Denis, the PCE DHN, we cover it from Equinix data center with 3 heat pumps of 3 megawatts, producing up to 11 gigawatt hour per year since 2024. Finally, we fully support the best practice of centralized thermal storage, which is also being developed in France. The identified potential of 11 terawatt hour per year should be replicated across member states. This is a key solution to meet the new EED Article 26.4 requirement banning new fossil capacity, including gas, in new or substantially renovated DHNs from 2030. It's a short-term challenge for the sector, and it's come with a cost. Therefore, we should incentivize network to provide thermal flexibility, for example, from enhanced state aid or by encouraging member states to set concrete thermal storage targets. In conclusions, the solutions are here and the potential is enormous. Now it is the time to prioritize wasted recovery on thermal flexibility, scale up proven projects, and ensure that both national and European frameworks support these transitions. Together, we can make district heating a cornerstone of Europe, clean Europe future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Actually, as for all previous speakers, I would have a lot of questions, but we are a bit constrained by time. Obviously, you mentioned 9% growth in France in 2024, so it simply confirms that the findings of the Aalborg study are really validated by the reality on the ground. I mean, with a proper framework, developments can go relatively quick. So thanks a lot. And now I must turn to our next speaker, to Jan-Erik from Danfoss. So obviously in the Aalborg analysis, energy efficiency plays a very decisive role in the pathways suggested by the study. So I thought, Jan-Erik, you could elaborate this morning on the interactions between the introduction of new heat sources, sector coupling, and energy efficiency. So please, Jan-Erik.
Yeah, thank you, Eloy, for the introduction, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. But most of all, thank you to Brian Malmathisen and his team at Aalborg University to, let's say, make this study. I think it's super important that there is a path, actually, that we could go for. It's a long-term path, and there's a lot to do. But coming to a fossil-free energy system, let's say, in a cost-efficient way, I mean, that is just a super relevant goal. And I would like to, let me jump the slide. I would like to look a little bit at an example from Sønderborg. And also in Sønderborg, even though it's a relatively small system, we have a lot of couplings to different sectors. And the whole point here is that those sectors have a very nice and relevant byproduct. It's a lot of heat. And I actually put the thermal, let's say, network in the center of my sector coupled picture, because when we have the thermal networks, we can actually utilize this heat, and that is actually a big benefit. And one sector is not shown here, and that is what you pointed at, Eloy. That is actually the building sector, or the buildings, and that is super relevant, because at the end of the day, the buildings, or let's say the heat customers, they decide how much energy is actually used, and especially what kind of temperatures the buildings need. So when we talk about reducing heat demands from the building sector, it's both about reducing the demand itself, but also to look at how can we make the buildings operate at lower temperatures, because that boils back to the system efficiency. And so first of all, lowering the heating demand in the buildings, we reduce energy consumption. And as we normally say, the greenest energy is the energy that is not used. But it's also in that way that, for instance, in many traditional buildings, we have applied radiators, and those are the heat emitters, and those radiators can operate at lower temperatures if the heat demand is lower and the heat capacity is lower. And that actually means that also the district heating network's temperatures can be lower. And what does that mean? Yeah, that means actually that the feasibility, the economical feasibility of renewable or alternative sources are increased. And by that, we can maximize the integration of those sources. But also when we look at many of the sources, either via our heat pump or not, then the efficiency of those are also higher if we are supplying lower temperatures. Heat pumps, solar thermal, geothermal, and many others. Then when we come to the building load, typically the heat load, it consists of two things. It's the heating itself, and it is the domestic hot water. Domestic hot water is rather constant. Heating varies over the season. And if we reduce the heating part, then of course we get a more uniform load over the year. And that is beneficial as we are cutting the peak demands, meaning the base load get a higher share. And that means that we can have an increased utilization of typically renewable or alternative sources that needs a certain, let's say, position in the base load. Also, direct heat recovery is easier. Quite sometimes we do not need to boost it. And then we have reduced, let's say, network distribution loss as the temperatures are lower. And definitely all those factors directly into benefits for the electrification of district heating, referring to the heat pump. A specific example also is the one in Sønderborg. It's a building. It's made in the period 67 to 70, and there are 19 building blocks, and there are like 450 flats. And we did different things. So many, let's say, traditional existing buildings, they have heating systems based for boilers, gas, oil, where temperatures traditionally were not so critical. So here we change from a one pipe system to a new pipe system. Individual, let's say, thermal control by radiator thermostatic valves. We made a very careful balancing of the system so that all the radiators put in are evenly utilized, and that actually gave a 5% energy saving. Next step was saving on the attic. That gave 3%, so basically insulation. But already here it tells a story that when it comes to energy savings, energy efficiency, it's not only about the, let's say, energy envelope of the building. It's a lot about what kind of equipment you put into the building. Then the facade in 2010, the facade was renovated, including new windows. That kicked definitely saving down by 15%. And here it's also important. It's also about livability and the appearance and how people care about, let's say, their homes. You can see on the lower picture how nice the building is. So an important, let's say, side effect of making energy renovation is typically that the buildings just get much better places to live in. Then, I mean, the controllers that supply the heat to the radiator system, they are digital, they are communicative. So here, actually, we implemented a smart control of the heating system based on, let's say, dynamic building models and weather predictions. And here we could have we actually documented a saving of 7%. So there are definitely some, let's say, IR-based solutions that can bring a lot and are super interesting from a return on investment point of view. And the last one was upgrading the domestic hot water system. In the traditional systems, the domestic hot water circulation can be a challenge, but here we managed to, so to speak, aftercool a higher temperature utilized for the domestic hot water circulation into the radiators, and we reduced the return temperature by 3 degrees. And you might say that 3 degrees is not a lot, but actually it matters a lot in the big picture. So a total heating energy saving of 30% was achieved. But just to say, digital control, renovating the heating system means actually a lot here on top of, let's say, the more building envelope related things. So that actually brings me to my last comment here, and that is actually that reducing heat demand of the building sector is important for decarbonizing the energy supply. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jan Erik. It's important, and it's really a condition sine qua non, I mean, to plugging new heat sources. So thank you very much. It was really really interesting. Now I will turn to Neil from Alfa Laval. So Neil, you're also working for a vibrant company, contributing to ensure efficiency of new district heating systems and also supporting the upgrade of existing systems. Well, there are very important findings in the study by Aalborg. So what did you find most useful? I mean, when you talk to policymakers, to buyers, to clients, please, Neil.
Thank you, Elwa. And thank you to Brian for the report. I think it's excellent, covers all the areas that we need to see and the PR that we need to do for district systems. The first thing I'd like to do is, yes, we're moving. Good. Good, that's a start. Is just focus on costs, really, because one of the biggest objections I get to the district approach is, oh, well, it's the cost involved. It's so costly to dig up the streets. It's so costly to put the pipes in. And also we have a lot of people struggling with energy costs, with the energy crisis, people in fuel poverty, a term that's used a lot in the UK. We need to take people out of that fuel poverty. So it's good that there is an element of cost addressed in this report. And the first thing, as Brian showed, really was this system cost reduction of 2.5 to 3.1%. And in itself, that seems quite small. But then when you look at what that means from a monetary point of view, 40 to 50 billion, it's a hugely significant figure. You also have the heat supply decarbonisation costs reduced by 10 to 20%. But lastly, it's that 30 to 35% cost reduction to the end user that is absolutely critical here. And if we can add that to the efficiency upgrades that have been mentioned earlier into the system, then you get significant benefit to the end users. And I know that is a huge focus point of the heating and cooling strategy that is coming up. So we see that the district approach to energy supply results in lower costs compared to the individual approach on all levels of that view. So that was a key takeaway for me. The second thing I just want to focus on is this diversification of energy sources. And I think there is a tendency to focus on energy sources. And I'm old enough to have lived through various different second comings of energy sources. Oh, it's solar. Oh, it's not solar anymore. It's CHP. It's this. And I think we need to move away from focusing just too much on the individual energy source. It's about the system as a whole, the holistic system. And the one thing that district energy facilitates is that diversification of energy sources. It gives you the receptacle, if you like, to put that heat into, and then mushrooms out the available energy sources that you can use. And that is a key, because that adds resilience into the network. It means if a certain source becomes costly, you can move to different sources, lower carbon sources, and so on. And what we can see here in this graph that Brian has produced is just how many of the energy sources are actually waste heat sources. And that is crucial. We cannot ignore that heat, and we cannot continue to send that to atmosphere. So these are the key points for me in that report, amongst many others, I should say. So we need those pipes in the ground to give you that place to put that waste heat into. And that's something here at Alfa Laval that we do an awful lot of it. So we work with many, many different companies of many, many different types, and across lots of industries as well. We work in the process industry, food, pharmaceutical, wastewater, you name it, pretty much all industries. And we work with them to capture that heat and use it. But I want to also step back a little bit more and talk about district systems in their whole. So talk about both heating and cooling, because one of the problems can be that seasonality that we see in the heat demand. So in winter, you have high heat demand, in the summer, much lower, as people have mentioned earlier. But if you're capturing waste heat, typically the waste heat is available all year round. So what do we do when the demand is lower in the summer? And that's where we need to be a bit creative, and we need to think of energy as a whole. So Eco Data Center is a data center company that we work very closely with, and they've solved that problem. They are producing heat all year round, as you would expect. A lot of their electricity is produced by biomass CHP. So what they do in the summer, when there isn't that demand for the heat they're producing, is they divert that heat into the drying process for biomass pellets. So they're using that heat all year round, but it's used for different things. In the winter, when the demand's there, it's into the district network. In the summer, they use it to dry those pellets. So it's really a circular business that they have, which is to be commended. We work with many others. One thing I never thought when I started working in district energy that I would link district energy to particle accelerators. But here in Lund, where I am today in Sweden, we have the world's largest low temperature district heating network, and a large proportion of that heat energy comes from waste heat capture from a particle accelerator in a physics laboratory. So we need to be more creative. As I say, we need to step back and look at all the different industries. How can we link them together? And the facilitator to link all these aspects together is the district energy system. We see again on my final slide here, we work in Germany with a company called Arubis, who are manufacturing or producing rather sulfuric acid. That creates a lot of heat. And we capture it, and we send it into the district heating network of Hamburg. So really, to reiterate my key points here, it is the district system that facilitates all this waste heat capture. So we have to hope that the heating and cooling strategy that comes out at the start of next year really just focus on pushing us forward to put those pipes in the ground, because that is the first step that we have to do. And once those pipes are in the ground, you have that place where you can then put all that waste heat you're going to capture from all these different sources. So it's now thinking about energy as the whole, and not just heat, not this silo thinking of, oh, we just need to think about heat. No, we need to think about heat, we need to think about cool, and we also need to think about electricity production as well. And as we start to integrate more renewable systems, so wind and solar, into our electricity supply, we see a fluctuation in electricity costs, sometimes going negative. So we need to then think about how we can integrate that or balance that a bit more by using district energy, maybe taking heat via ORC to produce electricity, maybe using biomass CHP to actually supply electricity when the price is high. There's another potential revenue stream there for the district energy companies. But also when it goes negative, that we start to take that electrical energy, maybe via heat pumps, but also via direct electrical boilers, because there is an excess of electricity, we're paid to use it. So again, there's another revenue stream here. So we need to think about, to reiterate, heat, cool, and electricity, and how all those three grids can be integrated together. And I think this Aalborg report really shows how that can be done. Thank you to everybody. And once again, thank you, Elwar and Brian.
Thank you, Neil. You really raised important points. On the question of prices and affordability, but it's obviously really, really high on the agenda of member states and the Commission, and it's indeed a very important, I think, aspect of the conclusions of the study by Aalborg. I mean, basically to show that a smart system approach can decarbonize at the lower cost compared to an approach based on individual solution or a silo thinking approach. Thank you very much, Neil. Now, I would like to turn to our next speaker, and I'm very glad that Margot Pinault is with us this morning. So Margot, you work at the Energy Efficiency Unit within DG Energy. Margot, I have a couple of questions. So the study by Aalborg obviously highlights a large potential for district energy. It recommends to accelerate investments. We have heard Brian. It also quantifies the benefits of a smart system approach for citizens, for Europe. Margot, what are the most compelling points for you at the time Commission Services are preparing a new heating strategy?
Good morning. Thank you, Elwa, and many thanks to all the speakers. It was really inspiring to hear all your presentations. So, as very well evidenced by the scientific work presented by Brian, and also confirmed by market practitioners, market evidence by the great following speakers, this transition to decarbonized heating is not only an opportunity to get rid of fossil fuels, but it's also an opportunity to redesign our energy system towards a system with embodied efficiency and resilience. And that's, of course, the goal overall of the energy transition in general, which should be therefore guided by the energy efficiency first principle, here understood as a disruptive change to achieve better performance of the system, of the decarbonized energy system, through this combined effect of energy efficiency at demand and supply side. And indeed, what we observed in the energy system that is based on fossil fuels were rather incremental improvements on energy efficiency on supply side by improving combustion processes, and on the demand side by improving efficiency of end users. While this energy transition brings about this opportunity for a disruptive energy efficiency improvement, such as that can be observed, for example, through direct electrification in the electricity system, or that can be expected also from direct use of available heat that can be maximized, as we've heard, through better system integration and improved efficiency of buildings. And the heating and cooling strategy will certainly look into that, how to maximize the use of available heat to boost efficiency and to enable electrification, because integrating available heat reduces the need for electrification of its production. And that's very important, because we need electricity to electrify other end users like transport, like industrial processes, and therefore indeed we need to maximize the use of available heat in our system. And as we've heard, heat pumps are certainly the technology that will enable use of available heat by transferring the heat between, let's say, two neighboring systems. And the heat networks are the infrastructure that enables use of available heat by collecting and transporting heat from the sources to buildings or industry. And therefore, both heat pumps and heat networks are the important elements to use the available heat, and will be important for the heating and cooling strategy. So we will look into the key enablers of energy efficient decarbonization of heating through integrated heating and cooling planning, especially at local level. As we've heard, we need more bottom-up planning processes in this energy transition journey, because so far the energy system was planned top-down, and the transition has the opposite direction. So we need also the processes to be developed at the local level and integrate the systems to better use the potential, the local level potential. Then development of heating and cooling networks, such as district heating, as a backbone of the local level system integration. The recognition of thermal-based flexibility and thermal storage in electricity system for enabling electrification and larger integration of renewable electricity. Strengthening the business case for waste heat reuse, and also renewable heat use, such as geothermal, solar thermal. So working really on the market enablers to strengthen the business case for these available heat uses, and deployment of heat pumps. And of course, last but not least, improving energy efficiency of buildings in order to reduce heating and cooling demand as the first step in line with our approach, following energy efficiency first. So that's in the nutshell the key elements we would like to look into in the heating and cooling strategy.
Thank you very much, Margot. I have one question. I mean, Commission Services will also prepare an electrification plan in 2026. And what are the links between this plan and the heating and cooling strategy? And are you working together with your colleagues on both plans?
Yes, absolutely. We are working in parallel, and time-wise also the processes are scheduled fully in parallel. So both electrification action plan and the heating and cooling strategy are foreseen for the first quarter of 2026. So somewhere in March probably. And this is very important because we need really that both reflect the links between electricity and heat and enable electrification, especially in cities to reduce the constraints on electricity grids and use the potential of heating and cooling to provide this thermal-based flexibility, the heat networks to release the stress on electricity networks. So, and as I said, maximize the use of heat that is available before trying to electrify its supply. Therefore, heating and cooling strategy will accompany this electrification action plan to better reflect the links between the two energy carriers that are complementary.
Yes, thank you. And Margot, one additional question. So you mentioned waste heat, geothermal. So are you thinking of a kind of facilitating framework or an approach to de-risk actually investments in these projects?
Yes, for waste heat, indeed, we have already for some years in the EU legislation quite enabling regulatory framework for waste heat reuse, because we realized already during the first heating and cooling strategy development that there is a vast potential of waste heat to be recovered. Technically, it's possible. Economically, it is challenging, and these economic barriers we will need to address further in the heating and cooling strategy, because despite this enabling, let's say, regulatory framework, the progress is not that much noticeable. So we will look at building kind of long-term collaboration frameworks at local level to provide let's say long-term visibility and build a business case on this basis, and also some de-risking instruments to enable investments in waste heat recovery. Therefore, this will be very much in the focus to look at economic barriers and organizational barriers of waste heat recovery to district heating. And very similar case for geothermal, where we need to de-risk the investments and ensure a long-term perspective for this development. And where, of course, heating networks will be also the enabler to build the economic case for geothermal, we consider.
Thank you very much, Margot. And now I will come to the Q&A sessions. We have a couple of questions from the audience. First, I have actually two questions for Neil. Actually, you already touched upon these issues already, but so what is the role, if I read, what role for buildings and system efficiency?
Yeah, a huge role. One of the things I come across on a regular basis, when systems aren't efficient, they generally start to become less reliable as well. So the two run hand in hand, and that can create obviously issues for the end users, again making their costs more, and also making their system unreliable. And most people tend to then try and direct me towards the plant room to say, have a look and in here and see what the problems are. And that is not the place to start. The place to start is right out on the system at the furthest points and start working your way back. So it's looking at things like the control methodology in that building for the individual heat units. Are they balanced correctly? Is there 3-port control that can be removed and changed to 2-port control? How is the pumping done? Is that fixed speed or variable speed? And really just slowly start to work your way back through the system. But regardless of the energy source, whether it's an individual heat pump in that particular building or whether it's district energy, it doesn't really matter. The same work needs to be done in the building. The same improvements need to be done because it will benefit both the heat pump or the district network, depending on what is the supply. But it's important to look at the system holistically and work right the way through from every single point down. And by the time you get to the plant room or the substation, you've probably solved 80 to 90% of any issues with unreliability or inefficiency in that building or system. And then you only have a small amount to address in the actual plant room or at the substation. So again, it's that holistic approach.
Thank you, Neil. I have another one for you. I think it's a very good question. So we heard Margot. I mean, the Commission is preparing about is talking about a new heating and cooling strategy. Question is, Neil, what role does cooling have on the road to 2050?
A huge role. As we know, the climate is changing. Most countries are getting warmer, so cooling becomes more of an issue. A fact I was given not so long ago was that London will have the climate of Madrid by 2050, and yet the UK isn't looking at cooling. So that seems an omission to me that needs to be addressed, for one thing. But more importantly, and this is really where you have a case of 1 + 1 makes 3. Cooling gives you another option when you have too much waste heat, because if you have too much waste heat in the summer, you can take heat from the district heating network, use it via an absorption heat pump to produce cooling. So again, we're balancing across these grids and smoothing out peaks and troughs, allowing you to use many different energy sources that are available, and the two go hand in hand. And to omit one or the other is missing the benefits of combining the two together, and that's the critical aspect.
Thank you, Neil. Now I have a question for Asbjørn. Well, we heard Margot. The Commission will look into ways to facilitate geothermal projects. Asbjørn, the question is, thank you very much for showing the geothermal project in Aarhus, but isn't geothermal very expensive? Can you answer to that?
The answer is, of course, no. But the heat regulation in Denmark is so that all the district heating companies are non-for-profit, and therefore they are only allowed to buy the cheapest relevant heat source. So it means that before we could enter into a contract with a district heating company in Aarhus and later a district heating company in Copenhagen, we were benchmarked against relevant heat sources, both from a business economic perspective and a societal economic perspective. And if we cannot meet the price of the competitors, the district heating companies are simply not allowed to go into or to enter into a contract with us. So we were benchmarked against new biomass facilities and large-scale air-to-water heat pumps, and it went very fine. But it's clear that if you look at the economic structure of a geothermal plant, there's a lot of upfront investment, and then it's cheaper to operate. And therefore, if I ask my board what they really wish from market, it's of course taking away a few of the obstacles about permitting and subsurface data and all of that. But it's also to be very, very sure that EU stays the course on the whole green transition, because they are a little bit in doubt now whether And my owners are institutional investors. They're a little bit in doubt now whether we see a swing or whether we actually stay the course, and we can expect that also post 2030 that we'll keep developing targets, sector-specific targets, and renewable energy targets. So I think that's what's highest on my wish list, if I'm allowed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Asbjørn. I have now a question for Raymond, and after I will jump to Joséphine, because I think it could also be interesting to hear Joséphine. Raymond, I read the question. Is there a way to accelerate the deployment of large heat pumps? What is the role for industry and what role for policymakers? Please.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Well, our customer, the district heating operators and we suppliers are looking for trustworthy policy for the future, which enables us to make the necessary investments in the future for our customers to invest in clean heating sources, and for us in employees, factories, resources, and research and development. And certainly to increase the number of these heat pump projects, which, by the way, are very efficient. And I think this is really a hot topic, efficiency, but not only the technology we are using, but also what we can work with, what Neil said, what Margot said. And so, first of all, it needs to be a good ratio outlook for gas and electricity price. Today, in many countries, we see high-priced electricity and low-priced gas. And if this is not coming down to 1 to 2, I think the deployment of large-scale heat pumps will slow down. On the other hand, I think maybe we should think about new possibilities. It's not only about subsidies, but if we talk about subsidies, why not subsidize the OPEX cost? Because typically OPEX stand in the way of a business case and not necessarily CapEx. And what I also would catch up with Neil, when we talk about efficiency, then we can increase the efficiency of heat pumps by bringing down the return temperature of district heating. And just give you an example, by bringing down the return temperature by just 1 degree could increase the efficiency of a heat pump by 2%. So if we lower the return temperature by 10 or 15%, which people believe it's very hard to do, but if we can achieve it, we can increase 30% of the efficiency of a heat pump. So there are many measurements actually to increase and deploy more of these big projects.
Thank you very much, Raymond. I have one question for Joséphine. So Joséphine, you already hinted at measures that would be necessary to scale up and accelerate the transition. The question is about the cooperation between district heating and cooling and the heat pump sector. I mean, how could they collaborate more to fully unlock the potential displayed in the study?
Thank you very much, Éloi. First of all, yes, what Raymond just explained, I could not agree more. I think you really pinpointed indeed the key elements that we need to further, accelerate the rollout of heat pumps, and then these large heat pumps in district heating in specific. Also, the idea of subsidizing the OPEX, maybe it's also something to reflect on. Currently, the Commission will open an innovation fund pilot auction for decarbonizing industrial process heat. It will be launched in December of this year. This is purely for industrial processes, but maybe it could be an idea to also look at a similar scheme for district heating. So yeah, it just popped up now when Raymond was mentioning this, but I think we could look at this scheme and maybe there's some similar things to do also for district heating. So to answer to your question, Eloi, I think first of all, yeah, of course, it's super important that we collaborate as we are doing today, but collaborate even closer in the future, reinforce each other's messages. And I think this webinar is a very good example of that. Also, yeah, the complementarity of both large and small heat pumps is very important. They are not competitors, they are complementary. We need all of them. We know that in some national contexts, this is seen a bit more as competition. I think we should really counter this type of stories or these type of ideas and avoid that this also happens in other countries or at EU level. So for that, collaboration is very important. Then, of course, more on the, how do you say, the day-to-day and more concrete things that we could do together. I also think to look into, for example, how to speed up large heat pumps in district heating and cooling networks by looking at best practices together with our members. For example, what are standard contracts that work well, what are financing models that work well, procurement practices that we know that work well, and more sharing those best practices, maybe some guidelines on that and so on. I think there is some work on the table where we could really do some concrete things together, aside from the higher level policy sharing each other messages. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Josephine. Neil, I see that you're raising your hand.
Yeah, sorry, this is a very quick point. I just wanted to echo Raymond's comments and maybe add that any HVAC system benefits from increasing the delta T, but when you think of a district system, just think of how much that small adjustment, that small improvement can affect. And we work with many energy companies, but we work with one who shall remain nameless. But for every 1 degree that we reduce their return temperature, they save €1 million per year. And that puts it into perspective, the advantage of maximizing delta T on all HVAC systems, but right the way through from the building to the network back to the plant room.
Thank you, Neil. I have a question for you, Brian, on cogeneration. Well, obviously, combined heat and power is very important in the mix of district heating in Europe nowadays. Brian, how do you see the role of CHP in the future by 2040 and 2050, please? Brian, I think you are muted.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. I see a huge decline in the mix with CHPs. But I see a potential that the heat can help the economy of the CHPs that will be there. So we are heavily expanding also right now the use of electricity in our energy system. And we're also heavily expanding the fluctuating renewable sources in our system. The whole idea with having those renewable sources is to not use power plants. So this is pivotal to understand. So everybody who thinks we want to have a baseload power plant in the future, they have not understood that we need to enable cheap electricity on the grid to be competitive and to enable electrification of our societies. This means that the system dynamic will change. And there's probably a lack of understanding for this right now. I think it's growing, the understanding. We need exactly, or at least the same electricity capacity to support the electricity grid in the future. I normally say around 500 gigawatts we need. But these need to operate 5 to 15% of the time, which limits the amount of fuel they use, but also limits the potential for CHPs. Now, we are using around 490 terawatt hours of fuel in our power plants and CHP plants. And there is a potential to use a part of this heat, and that should of course be done. But it's important to understand that a lot of this heat will be there when we don't need the heat in the heat system, because it's a summertime or there are other sources that we are already using, which are cheaper. And this means that we have to regard the power plants as not combined heat and power, but combined power and heat. And that is sort of the role that I see of CHPs, that we need those to not be baseload, neither on the electricity side or on the heat side. Otherwise, we cannot enable a dynamic where we allow for heat pumps, where we allow for geothermal, where we allow for waste heat sources.
Thank you very much, Brian. And of course, it's important also to bear in mind that when we are talking about the heat market in 2050, we are talking in the context of a fully decarbonized energy sector, so a new situation. Thank you very much. I have two additional questions. Actually, it's also around the role of efficiency, but I think it's very important. One is for Jan-Erik. What would you recommend district heating utilities to focus on when it comes to energy efficiency and the building sector? Please, Jan-Erik.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eloy. Yeah, if we look at the system, then I would say the heat generation, the distribution, that's in professional hands. What goes on in the building is a little bit more sketchy. But in my opinion, the utilities should look at a little bit far-sighted plan. How do we bring the temperature demands of the building down? So simply implement a strategy. And that is not something that is fixed overnight, but it's like a long-term process. And a simple example could be if we look at existing buildings in existing district heating systems, start to make, let's say, technical demands, for instance, for the heat interface unit, so that they can handle, let's say, low temperature supply and low return temperature. I'm thinking about efficiency and thermal length, for instance, of the heat exchangers. And that is very good to put in even today, still that the temperatures are not low, because there's a certain replacement of the equipment. It needs to be renewed, even it has long time. Then by, let's say, refurbishing or replacing a heat interface units, then the additional cost to make it ready for low temperature operation is really marginal. So better to do it ahead of time. And then the day the temperature is reduced in the networks, then the buildings are, so to speak, ready. And that is like the heat interface unit. And then I would say utilities, they must look at the energy meter data and simply, chase, and there are many good examples of that, those buildings who are performing bad from a return temperature point of view, because we heard how critical not only the supply temperatures, but also the return temperature, for instance, in relation to the heat pumps. And then simply also look into, is there a critical radiator that needs to be replaced? One radiator in one house or one flat can totally ruin the return temperature. Again, better balancing, better utilization of the radiator areas, I would say. But there are many good examples out there, also with utilities who really have it in hand. New building is a different story. I mean, underfloor heating, domestic hot water preparation on the flat level, those kind of things, they can run with below 60 degrees supply temperature and a return temperature basically at around 30 or even a bit below. So it's, again, the challenge of the existing buildings. And I would say that reducing the energy consumption, as I addressed in my short presentation, I mean, that way will in any case help it.
Thank you, Jan-Erik. And I have a last question, this time for Samuel. It's actually it's kind of same topic. Samuel, on the utility side, isn't it challenging to plug in new heat source? Are you engaged in discussions with customers to ensure full efficiency and success of new projects?
Yeah, and I totally agree with what say Jan Erik on the building side, but yes, on the utility side, it's an important question too. And yes, it's a challenging, but of course, unfortunately feasible. Integrating low temperature heat source requires careful hydraulic and thermal design. We use advanced network modeling and dynamic control to maintain the stability and efficiency. Close coordination with customer, with audits, substation upgrades, and performance monitoring ensure an optimal operations and the successful of wish decarbonizations. That's it.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Looking at the time, well, we need to close. So I would like to thank all speakers for the rich exchange. I'd like to thank Brian also for the quality of the work. I mean, the study done by Aalborg brings a lot of very important results, highlighting the need to get out of conventional silo thinking, I would say, and the need to consider together energy supply and energy efficiency, and how sector cooperation can foster a better, a cheaper energy transition. And obviously, these results come at a very important moment when the Commission is preparing a new heat strategy. And we heard very clear messages from Margot on the direction of work of the Commission. So a big thank you to all the speakers. I would also like to thank our audience. Thank you for your trust. And with this, well, I will close. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.